one. It's ICAST 2025, and there's a bunch of new reels, rods, baits, fishing gear to get after. So let's take a look at it. Let's start with reels. The reel I wanted to highlight, and there's a bunch of them out, but I wanted to look at this price point reel, and that is the Shimano NASCI. Now, we'll start at the old version, and a lot of Shimano reels are like this. See that? There's a little divot there, and that little divot likes to catch your line if you don't place it manually into the line roller. So you can train yourself to place the line manually into the line roller, or every once in a while it's going to catch in there and do like a half figure eight and cause problems, right? But otherwise, it's a perfectly functional reel. It's sturdy, made well, a little bit heavier than something like an Ultegra. It doesn't have the long stroke spool, and it's a price point reel at about $100. All right, let's look at the new one. Different color scheme. I'm not crazy about the blue and copper and silver, but that's okay. Color's kind of secondary. What they've done is they've trickled down some technology from their higher end reels, and they've put a one-piece bail and line roller on here. You see that? See the smooth transition into the line roller? This is on all of their high-end reels, all their high-end spinning reels, including the Ultegra. And so previously, I would only recommend on the Shimano series the Ultegra and up. Ultegra, Stratic, Vanford, whatever you want to spend. But start at the Ultegra. Now we've got a different option. Now we've got the NASCI, where you don't have to manually put the line in the line roller. It does not have the long stroke spool, so you're not going to get as much distance as the Ultegra. Now, for certain situations, you don't care about distance, and I'm thinking about something like ice fishing with a 500 size NASCI. That'll work great. I don't care about distance because the hole is 2 feet in front of me. I'm fishing straight up and down. No problem there. Another situation, if you were fishing vertically, like jigging or damiki rigging or drop shot or something like that, where distance really isn't a factor, no problem. And for Shimano reels, I would go with the 3000 size. Slightly bigger spool, has a little bit more capacity, but that's not the important thing. They give you a bigger handle, which I like. I've got large size hands, and they give you a T handle with the 3000 size. Now you compare it to something like the Legalis and Daiwa. So in the Daiwa lineup, the Legalis is as low as I'd go. See, it's got that one-piece line roller, or roller bail transition into the line roller. And this is very comparable to the NASCI now. It's in that same $100-ish price point. They're both good reels. I have several of the 1000 size. And for Daiwa, I usually go with the 2500 or the 2500 XH. This is a faster gear ratio. Whereas Shimano, I bump up to the 3000. But they don't really have a small ice reel for me. So again, the Shimano NASCI 500 size would be my pick for ice fishing. For vertical fishing, either one of these is fine. I do a fair amount of trout fishing with the 1000 size, but the NASCI is going to be a top contender now for that price point, which I think previously the Legalis owned pretty much without competition. And if you really want something even a little bit nicer, the JDM Legalis, which they're not going to show you here on Tackle Warehouse, is even better than this one. All right, now let's look at the Ultegra just to compare that. There's a new one out of the Ultegra too. It's the FD. The old model was called the FC. Once again, they changed up the color scheme a little bit. Kind of reminds me of some previous generation Sustains. Maybe they did that on purpose. I don't know, but it kind of looks Sustain-like to me. This one has the long stroke spool, and it really makes a difference over either the Legalis or, you know, its siblings, the Exceller, the Fuego, up to the Tatula. I fish them all. To me, they're all very, very similar. But this increased distance in the spool means that there's a worm gear under there somewhere to give you even cross wraps across that extra length of the spool. And this is the same technology, or very similar technology, that the old Daiwa SS series used. I don't know why Daiwa didn't do anything with it, but it was an excellent casting reel. It still is. I still have one of them. But it's the same idea, and Shimano's kind of borrowed it, I'd say. They do have some other long casting reels for surf and carp fishing, but I would say they borrowed the idea from Daiwa originally, but it works great, and it really does provide that extra distance. They're smooth, I would say smoother than the NASCI, although I haven't spent a lot of time with the NASCI because of the issues I mentioned earlier. So, if you want the distance, anytime you're, you know, distance matters. Maybe you're chasing schooling fish, and they're just, you know, always 10 yards away from the boat, 10 extra yards away, and you can't quite reach them. Something with a long stroke spool will get you that extra distance, and maybe you can reach those fish. Or, you know, pretty much any situation where you need distance, that you're not fishing vertically, you're not drop shotting, you're not jigging vertically, you're not damiki rigging. Any time you need that distance, or, you know, you're fishing from the bank and you just can't quite reach that deeper water where you know the fish are. You can't reach that weed line. You can't reach the drop off. Anything like that, spend the extra money and get a reel with a long stroke spool. All right. Enough about reels. We could talk about high-end reels till I'm blue in the face, but honestly, I try to stay away from them. The Ultegra is just so good. Some of the Legalis is very good. The new NASCI looks very good. I'm going to have to fish them a lot more before I give a final review of those. But, you know, these lower price point reels are just so good now. I don't even buy Stratics anymore. I don't look at Vanfords. Ultegra is kind of the top of the line for me now, and I still have a ton of old Stratics. So we're going to stay away from the high-end reels. They're really, really nice. If you have the money, I'd say go for it. But let's move on. Let's move on to minnow baits, and there's a bunch of them. So let's talk about the Jerk. I might have to put in a few more. Oh no, we've got a high volume of traffic coming into Tackle Warehouse. This seems to happen quite a bit. Let's try. There we go. Crush City Jerk. Let's try that. Okay, here we are. We're in. Now, for whatever reason, Rapala released the Jerk in Canada, and I guess elsewhere in the world, but not the US. And to me, this is a really I'll be generous and say a crazy decision, because it's a great soft jerk bait. I think it got its popularity mostly for damiki rigging. It's made to fish more vertically because it has a tail section that doesn't want to roll as easily. This tail is going to resist rolling a little bit, but it'll be a more subtle roll, and that sometimes can be okay in strolling baits too. But I think originally it was made for vertical fishing, and maybe that's why they didn't release it into the US. Now I think that's a mistake. Just to be candid there. Also in Canada they have other sizes, like a 5-inch and a 7-inch. So far it looks like we're only going to get the 3 3/4 inch, which is a small bait. It's kind of strange to me why they would just release this bait in Canada and not more broadly into the US, because if they did, especially the 5-inch and 7-inch, I know it would sell. I don't know why we're just getting this size now. I mean, I think it's been a couple years since they've had it in Canada, It's just very, very strange. But they have some good colors. For strolling, I like two-tone colors because as the bait's rocking, the fish will see that difference in coloration. So something like white or albino pearl, they call it. You know, you're not going to get that two-tone difference through the water that as it's flashing, as it's rolling, the fish can key in on it. So if you're going to fish it as a strolling bait, I would skip all of the monotone colors. Pearl white is another one. I would skip that. Anything that's two-tone that can match some of the bait fish in your area. I mean, they have a lot of good colors. I'm not too crazy about the perch color, but that's okay. They have a lot of good shad, herring type colors. Electric shad's always a good choice. Hard to beat. All right, let's move on. In the Freeloader series, they have a couple new sizes. They have the 4 1/4, that's the standard, but they have a new 5 1/4 and a new 6 1/4. And same thing, I would just skip over all of the albino shad's got a little bit of two-tone to it. How about that one? No, that's kind of a monotone with some flakes. So I would skip over this color for strolling. You know, maybe you wanted to use that color for like a chatterbait trail or something like that. But for strolling, I want two-tone. So let's skip over like all white, wherever that is, pearl white. Yeah, I don't want that for a strolling bait. Maybe as a chatterbait trailer, though. And generally, I'm trying to imitate either, you know, to me, this perch color looks more like a pumpkin seed than a perch, but that's okay. I'm looking for more either panfish, depending if that's the primary forage species. You know what looks more like a perch to me? Let me see if I can find it. Green pumpkin chartreuse pepper. To me, that looks more like a perch than any of the other colors, including the one that is labeled perch. Anyway, yeah, in some of these darker colors, you know, the monotone with some flake, I don't want that for a strolling bait. So any of the two-tone baits, this has a lot of flash in it. Maybe on a sunny day that would be good. This monotone chrome, no interest for me as a strolling bait. The electric shad's really good color. To me, this could be a herring, could be a shad, could even be a bluegill. You know, to me, it looks more like a bluegill than some of the bluegill colors. So just it depends on what's the primary forage fish in your lake. You know, is it panfish based? Is it herring based? Is it shad based? Is it smelt based? And you want to roughly try to match the prevailing size of the bait species and something in the neighborhood of the color. You know, sometimes I've done really well in stained water or cloudy, dark days with this color, chartreuse and pearl. That's kind of surprised me that it works so well, but the fish really seem to like it, including smallmouth. So don't sleep on that color either. All right, let's move on. The Mooch Minnow. This also got two new sizes. Now the 3.5 inch is a pretty small bait. I imagine, you know, just based on measurements, it's going to be pretty small, like the Crush City Jerk that was in Canada for so long and is just coming here. So the 2.5 is going to be super small. And to me, that makes more sense as like a crappie bait or maybe even ice fishing, something like that. But it wouldn't be my choice for bass fishing because the 3.5 is already quite small. The 4.5 is much more interesting to me. And unlike the Freeloader, which is a plastisol bait, this is some, they call it TPE, but basically an elastomer plastic, like the Z-Man plastic. It's very durable. This tail section, when you fish it, sometimes if a fish lets go suddenly or something, that tail section can get wrapped around your line and the eye of the jig head, and you can kind of peel it off and it will still stay intact. Now, if this was a plastisol bait, that tail section would be gone. In addition, this little, I don't know what you call it, like, it's not a skeg, it's not really a rudder, it's not really a paddle tail, but this little piece of plastic here, it gives it just a little bit of a swimming motion. So you can retrieve this as kind of a, I think the Japanese call it eye motion. It's a very subtle wag back there of the tail. And a lot of times, if you watch bait fish, they don't have a tremendous hard thumping tail action like paddle tails. A lot of them swim in more of a smooth, fluid. When that real hard tail kick comes in is when they're trying to get away from a predator. That's when they're really thumping. But when they're just swimming along, it's pretty subtle, pretty I don't know, snaky maybe. Maybe that's the wrong word, but a subtle tail kick. And this little tab thing gives you that subtle tail kick. So why is that important? You can fish this bait vertically. You can fish this bait strolling. You can fish this bait as a slow swimming motion, just a straight up retrieve. But also, if you're fishing this bait vertically and your boat is not perfectly still, say you're in 30 feet of water, 25 feet of water, whatever, and there's a little bit of a breeze, and you don't have some GPS linked Minn Kota trolling motor or whatever that's spot locking you in a spot, just a little bit of breeze, and you'll start drifting. And this bait will be swimming underwater as you're shaking it. Anyway, the fish absolutely love it. For this kind of bait, it depends on how you want to fish it. If you want to fish it vertically, you could go with one of those solid colors if you had vertical fishing in mind. Maybe you're fishing really stained water. Typically the finesse stuff doesn't play as well in the really, really stained, cloudy, dirty, murky water, but you could do it with some color that stands out like that. For me, I'm mostly going to be still with the two-tone because I want to fish this bait in a variety of different ways. I want to be able to stroll it with a jig head and a loop knot. I want to be able to fish it vertically, shake it. I want to do everything with it. And this bait, especially in that larger size, is going to be a very versatile bait. You can even put it on the back of a chatterbait. It's going to have a little bit of a kick there, but not so much that it's going to fight the blade on the chatterbait. Sometimes people want to put a paddle tail on the back of a chatterbait. You can do that, but just keep in mind sometimes it's going to be trying to fight that blade. You can put it upside down. Sometimes that helps so that it's not fighting the blade as much. But I would prefer either a straight tail like the Freeloader or a little tab tail, I'll call this, like the Crush City Mooch Minnow. All right, let's keep moving on. Spent too long on that. Crush City Mare. There's a new size here, kind of bridges the gap between the 3 and 4, and they've come out with a 3.5. Now, is it really necessary for that extra size in there? Well, they already had the 2.5. The 2.5, by the way, is a great crappie bait. Also works great for bass when they're on smaller bait, maybe in the fall time of the year, something like that. But the 3 and 4 are also great baits, and the 3.5 is just filling out the product line, I guess. And they have a bunch of great colors. Electric Shad. They have, let's say your bait is more like brown on top, tan on top. It's Tennessee Shad color is a really good one for me. Has a fine silver flake in there. To me, it really looks a lot like some of the herring and well, it's more so herring. Some of the herring in different lakes, they are tan on top. They're not like purplish or gray on top. They're tan on top. If you see them swimming in the water, especially in some of the clear lakes near the ocean, they're tan on top. And so I think this matches them a little bit better. Anyway, I was pleased to see another size in that lineup. It's not a huge deal, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Let's keep going. Minnow baits, the Rally Shad. Now this is a new bait from Xzone, and I already picked it up actually. I fished with it. And I got, bet you can't guess, electric shad. That's a nice looking electric shad. A lot of the herring around me, they've got a little bit of purple in them, so I like that purple flake. They've got a darker back, I like that. A lighter belly, that's what I want in a strolling bait. Darker back, lighter belly. Again, this 3.75 size, I think it's a little small. So I went with the 4.5. The bass have no problem eating it, but it's not very durable. So I would say the durability is a little bit worse than the Freeloader. The tail section actually stayed in place. What was happening was ripping near the hook and near the head of the jig head in multiple places. So that's not ideal. It's not like some of the TPE plastic, like some of the Z-Man plastic, the elastomer stuff, but it's easily fixed with mended. So if you can get over that this bait is a plastisol bait, it's gonna tear, it's gonna rip, you're gonna have to repair them if you want to keep fishing them. But I'd say get a bottle of mended. I'll show you what that looks like. Looks like this. Don't get this little tiny one, and don't get the big one. Get this 1/2 ounce size. It can go off after about a year, or if you keep it in like the hot sun, it's going to go off much sooner. But you'll know it when it starts to coagulate and turn hard inside the bottle, and after that it's done. So get the 1/2 ounce size, and it's like a little nail polish brush type thing in there, and you just brush it on the tear, let it sit. You let them sit overnight. It does smell, but you know, use a fan, use good ventilation, use a mask if you have one, open a window, and that bait will be good as new in the morning. You know, I've had fluke style baits, actually Zoom Super Flukes. I've fished a whole pack for a year just by mending it. Unless you get cut off or broken off, or pickerel cuts the tail off, something like that, you can repair them again and again and again. And so that's what I'd suggest for the Rally Shad. They've got some really good colors. Like, I like their perch color. Actually looks, you know, fairly like a perch. This orange belly's a little bit more than a typical perch, but I like this color. I like that combination. It's better. It's a better looking perch than some other perch I've seen. Smelt looks like a good imitation of smelt. Sweet fish is that kind of gold tan back with a white belly. I like that combination too. So they've got some good colors. I like the electric shad. Like I said, I've already fished it. I've caught a bunch of fish on it. So I'd say this is a winner with that little caveat about durability. All right, let's keep going. Drop shad. Ooh, that's not what I want. Great Lakes Drop Minnow. That's the one I want. They have a new size out. It's 2¼ inch drop minnow. And to me, this isn't a strolling bait so much. This is going to be more of a crappie ice fishing type bait. And especially in this color, something bright, they can see if there's snow on top of the ice. I know not everybody has ice fishing around them, but for me, this is what it's going to be. And if I didn't have ice, I just wanted to fish crappie in open water. They've got a bunch of good colors. I like that size, maybe not in that color, but anything. I like that those brighter colors, not that. Those brighter colors for crappie, even like, I don't know if they have one, but like a morning dawn color, pinks, chartreuse. I do like that meltdown color the best, I think. All right, let's keep going. Strike King Z2. Now this bait is very, very similar to the Z-Man Jerk Shadz, but it doesn't have the Pro Cure. The new Z-Man Jerk Shadz, the scented ones, all come up lathered with this Procure stuff. And I like Procure. I don't love it on the baits out of the package. And the reason is they're harder to rig. They're slippery. So I'm pleased to see the 7-inch Z2. Now I've fished a 7-inch Jerk Shadz from Z-Man for quite a while. I fish it in the salt. It works great for stripers, bigger black sea bass. A big black sea bass has no problem with a 7-inch plastic. But you get a lot of the Z-Man colors. I assume Z-Man is making it for them and shipping it because it's all the same Z-Man colors like the deal. It just doesn't have the Procure scent slathered all over it, which I like. It comes in a smaller bag. At least I'm familiar with the 5-inch. It comes in a smaller bag, and you get, I think, 4 per pack. They last a really long time though. All right, yeah, so 5-inch 4 per pack, 7-inch 4 per pack. There is a price jump with the 7. I mean, it's just a lot more plastic, first of all. But these baits last a really long time. I can put this bait on a jig head. Usually I fish it this color specifically on a green pumpkin jig head with a 3/0 or 4/0 hook, and it'll last and last and last and last. And after you wear it out on bass, you can fish it in the salt, get another 50 fish on it. I mean, in terms of value, it's pretty ridiculous. Unless you snag this bait or maybe get cut off by a toothy critter like a pike or a pickerel, it's an incredible value, especially compared to some of the plastisol baits I was talking about earlier. So I was pleased to see the 7-inch size. Let's talk about the Z-Man Jerk Shadz, because they have a new 6-inch size. So it's, if you want the 6-inch size, you gotta go back to Z-Man. I'll show you one of these colors. See all this this brown goop? That is the Procure stuff, and it works. It's a good scent. I'm not knocking it. It's just harder to rig when it's all lathered up with. It's essentially like fish grease. So they're a little bit harder to rig. Sometimes I'll even take a paper towel and wipe some of the scent off so I can rig it. And then once I'm out on the water fishing, if I want to add more scent, I have a bottle of Procure. I can do that. Easy peasy. But the 6-inch size is a nice addition. You just have to go back to the Z-Man side and away from the Strike King side. I think that's all the minnow baits I wanted to talk about, but let's talk about some of the heads. So we'll run through a few of these quickly. All right, so they have a Dirty Jigs Pure Tungsten Guppy head. They have a Dirty Jigs HD Tungsten Guppy head already that I think was a partnership with Tactical Bassin. There's a different keeper here. I'm not sure if they used a lighter wire hook, but there's not much difference to my initial glance between the two jig heads. So I'm not really understanding why there was a need for this, but I like it. I like the HD guppy head too. Or maybe they gave you some bigger hook sizes. It's definitely that has the wire keeper instead of the molded keeper there. The hook wire looks very similar to me, so I'm not really sure the difference, other than the wire keeper and maybe a few different hook sizes that stands out to me. But these are another option, another good option, and I like the fact that there's a 3/0 hook there. You can fish this head with bigger baits. For a jig head, you get 2 of them. You're paying $5 each. That's not a great value, but they're tungsten, and you're going to pay extra for tungsten. There are some alternatives on the market that are cheaper than $5 per jig head, and it's kind of up to you if you decide it's worth it or not. Did I spell that right? There we go. So here's another option. This is the Northland Tungsten Smeltinator jig head. Now, where I'm fishing, which is in the New England area, I have to fish tungsten jig heads when I'm fishing freshwater. It's a law all around New England states to protect loons. It doesn't really matter, but that's what I have to fish. So I like having these tungsten options because previously sometimes it was just hard to find any option with a decent enough hook that wasn't going to bend out. This is a Gammy 604 hook, I'm pretty sure. And I fished a lot of those hooks. Yeah, there it is. Gamakatsu 604 hook. I fished a lot of those hooks. They're solid hooks, especially in the larger sizes. And it's just nice to have some options. Something like this green pumpkin, or they call it camo. That would match up well with like a deal color, some of those perch colors, a bluegill color, something in that panfish profile. If your lake has a lot of panfish, that could work for you. It's got a molded tungsten keeper, it looks like. There's no wire keeper. I know for me, depending on which bait I'm fishing, I can mash that barb down if it gets in the way of rigging. I can cover this up with super glue, and like a PTE style plastic will last, I don't know, forever on that kind of jig head. For plastisol baits, I'll probably leave that jig head up, still put some super glue on there, and fish that until the bait rips. And what else? I saw a few other ones. Oh yeah, there was a Northland tungsten ball head, something like that. Oh, I'm gonna get the name wrong. Northland tungsten round ball. Let's try that. Round ball. Yeah, there it is. So this has more of like a EWG style hook, and this is very similar. I'll say they borrowed heavily from the Gamakatsu Horizon head. So it's a tungsten head, 2 per pack. So again, you're paying $5 per jig head, which is a little steep. But it's good to have options. I like this matte green pumpkin. I like this matte smoke. So the green pumpkin I would fish with more of those panfish colors, or maybe a black with the panfish colors. And then the smoke with more of those herring colors, those shad colors. I'm not so crazy about the birthday flake white, but that could play too. I like some of these 3/0 size hooks. Could even go with it'd be nice if they expanded the range and had a 4/0 hook for some of those big baits like the 7-inch plastics. But it's good to have options. And I think there was one more oh yeah, Epic Baits, tungsten, not the worm weight, not the punching weights. Oh, come on now. Epic Baits, tungsten, shine head. All right. Shine head. Come on, man. Give me the shine head. Oh, it's not gonna give it to me. Let's see if I can find it. Find it this way. There it is. Epic Baits tungsten ball head. So I thought this was kind of innovative. What they've done is they've wrapped coils of braided line around the shank of the hook. And I assume they've somehow, it looks like there's some sort of glue or adhesive on that hook shank that they've sprayed on there and wrapped this braid on there. And what this is supposed to do is act like a bait keeper, except there's no large protruding barb, there's no big wire thing here. It's just a thin length of braid. I don't know, how long do you think that is? 2 inches, 3 inches piece of braid wrapped around the shank of the jig head. So I think this is a very innovative idea. I think with some super glue on there, it'll both hold the braid on and hold the bait to the hook shank with that braid in there. It acts almost like a grip. I remember Lunker City years ago, I think they still have them. They had a grip head and it had ridges all along the, much more severe than this, but it's the same idea of holding the plastic in place. And they have some 4/0 size hooks, and it's good to have options for larger hooks, and even the 5/0. So the 5/0 I really like for a 7-inch bait. I didn't see what kind of hook they had in there. They just said it a razor sharp medium wire hook. I don't know what that means. If they mean it's a Mustad or BMC, doesn't look like the Gamakatsu 604. The eye and the gap look different. It's not a huge gap there. That could be okay too, especially once you push into the larger sizes. But the main thing is just it's another option. And I love that we're getting more options here. And depending on which, I can't tell how many per pack, but I thought it was 3 per pack. So it seemed like in a lower price point. So it seemed like, once they list all the details, you'll be able to see if it's really 3 per pack. But with a 5/0 hook, 3 per pack, $8.99, something like that. I don't know exactly how many you're going to get per pack, but if it is what I'm saying, it's a better value than some of the other options. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, let's talk a few swim baits. Z-Man Swag. Now this bait, it's Z-Man plastic, so it's going to be super durable. They have an optional belly hook harness down here. They have a line through big hook that can slide out, and so when you get your fish on this bait, the hook's going to slide with the fish, the bait's going to slide up the line, and you're just going to be fighting the fish on a single hook. And typically you land most of those hooked fish because they don't have the leverage of this big plastic bait swinging around in front of them. At least that's the theory. So I like the idea, the concept, the design. Some of these molded fin features are nice. The eye's nice. But the tail is really key. Now this tail is supposed to swim at slow speeds and at high speeds. A lot of times you reel swim baits, it could be line through, could be other soft plastic swim baits, and they'll blow out if you try to burn them. And a lot of times speed can trigger fish. So even if you're reeling this bait fast back to the boat to make another cast, sometimes a fish might get triggered by that and lash out and eat it right at the boat. So even if you're not purposely using speed as a trigger, it's good that it doesn't blow out when you reel it fast. I'm thinking of like a mag draft, something like that. So, and you want to be able to fish it slow too. So this tail should work well at all speed. That's a big deal. And some of the color is a little out there, but the one that stood out to me was perch. Now, that's not a bad perch color. I'm not sure about this turquoise hit on the gill plate, but it's got orange fins, it's got a white belly, it's got vertical bars like a perch, it's got kind of that olive green top, a lighter green sides. To me that looks like a perch, and I think smallmouth might think the same. And for smallmouth, maybe that 5-inch size would be better. And you can fish it with a treble hook if you're fishing open water smallies. You can take that treble hook off and just fish the single hook and creep it near bottom. You could even, if you're fishing on the bottom, you could cut these hook hangers off with a pair of wire cutters, so you're not snagging weeds and stuff, and grind that thing along the bottom. So I like this bait. I like the idea. Price may be a little high, but there's a lot of innovation in this bait, and you're paying for the Z-Man plastic, which is a little bit more expensive than Plastisol, but it lasts longer. Even if you tangle with some toothy critters, I would guess this tail, as thick as it is, would last pretty well. And bass should be no problem. So this bait is going to last a long time, unless you snag it or get your line cut off further up the line from toothy critter or something like that. But anyway, I like this idea, I like the concept, And this is a bait I'd probably keep on my list, and if it goes on sale, I'd probably grab it. All right. G-Ratt. G-Ratt 2.0. So this is the Sneaky Pete, the Pistol Pete, the Papa Pete, and I don't know if they still have them up on the website. I'm not going to show them, but some of the colors on the old G-Ratt baits, they were kind of Mickey Mouse. They were kind of basic, and not that color's the end-all be-all. I'm not a huge color guy myself, but these are better looking colors. Now this blush trout to me looks more like a herring than a trout, but that's okay. You got a bone color with an orange tail. You know, this is more of an attractor color, a attention getter. Hitch, we don't have any hitch where I am, but that looks like a bait fish pattern. I think it would play well. This is another look. To me, this looks like a herring pattern, some kind of bait fish pattern. I think that'll play well. This light trout, you know, doesn't look too much like a trout, but it looks like, you know what it looks like? It looks like the S-Wave light trout color. Maybe that's what they were copying. But I like some of these new colors. And they have, in the Sneaky Pete, they have some Steve Kennedy edition colors and sizes, and these are especially weighted to have a neutral buoyancy. The others are slow sinkers. So, you know, when you see that price jump up to whatever it was, $55, that's the Steve Kennedy edition. And it's supposed to be suspending and not a slow sinker. Now for me, the Pistol Pete is more attractive, and I'm specifically thinking about smallmouth in current situations. The G-Ratt baits historically have a reputation of doing better in current than, say, an S-Waver. So for me, I'm thinking smallmouth. I wish there was something with a little bit more of like not something as crazy as that, but a little bit more chartreuse for the smallmouth in the 5 3/4. But you know what? I think a color like that will be great. The bone with the orange tail. For whatever reason, smallmouth really like orange tails. I don't know why, but even when I used to fish years ago, Mr. Twister worms, like a pumpkin color with an orange tail, I used to kill smallmouth on that orange tail, and I don't really know why, but they see that orange tail, makes them angry. Strange, but anyway, that's my idea there. And let's keep going on. Wake Rat. See if we can. Oh man, how are we going to get there from here? So there's a new Fishlab bait, and it was Okuma. It was the BBZ. Come on, show me the BBZ Wake Rat. BBZ Wake Rat. You're not going to show it to me, are you? All right, we're going to get there. We're going to get there somehow. Fishlab BBZ. All right, we're making a little progress. Oh, you're not going to show me that. Fishlab. How about a Kuma Rat? We could do a Kuma Rat. Oh, you're going to be difficult, aren't you? You're going to be difficult. Going to make me go through all the rat baits, shop all rat baits. Didn't want to have to do this. It better not be under wake baits after I go through all this. Oh, it's going to be under wake baits, isn't it? Oh, you rotten thing. Wake baits. All right. Well, just humor me for a minute. See if I can get Tackle Warehouse's search optimization to work properly. It's not going to work properly. Basically, BBZ Rat. How about that? Gonna drive me crazy. All right, it's not going to work. What you have is a rat, and it's a two-piece rat, not this bait, different bait, with what looks like a jitterbug mouth on it. How about jitterbug? Will you show me a jitterbug? Yes. All right, so to me, what that bait does is it fixes all the things that are wrong with this old jitterbug. And the jitterbug's a classic. I actually own this exact bait, the two-piece. It has kind of hokey hook harnesses, this swivel attachment thing here. The screw eyes are kind of small and weak and screw into the bait. Same with the hinge. You really should reinforce them. You can literally unscrew them, put some super glue in and screw them back in. Same with these little micro screws on the bottom here. That's what I recommend if you're fishing this bait. But basically, the BBZ Wake Rat is a rat version of the jitterbug, which fixes a lot of the problems that the jitterbug has just because it's a classic lure. And at the time, 50 years ago, this was state of the art. Well, it's not state of the art anymore. And that Fishlab BBZ Wake Rat is trying to fix that, I would say. And they made a decent effort at it. All right, let's go to a bait we can actually look at properly. The baby bubbler. There it is, the Bill Lewis baby bubbler. That's hard for me to say for some reason. So to me, this looks like a micro whopper plopper. And why is that interesting at all? And the answer is, I don't know yet. But one of the problems with small whopper ploppers is that they tend to roll. They just don't have enough mass to fight this spinning tail. The way the line tie is and how deep the body is, if it's weighted right, it might act as like a keel and try to prevent this main body from rolling and spinning as that tail is rolling and spinning. So I don't know yet if this is going to be the answer, but it's on my list. And I'd really like somebody else to do a review first and tell me it's awesome and I should just go buy one. But this is a maybe for me. But it's interesting enough if they fix some of the problems with the small choppos, the small whopper ploppers. This will be a great addition. And if it rolls like all the others, because of it's a problem of physics and the keel didn't work or the line tie lower didn't work, that's just a problem that you're going to have to deal with. All right. Yo-Zuri 3DRX pencil. Now this is not a new bait, but Yo-Zuri has a lot of new colors out, and some of them are pretty interesting. Now this is a small bait. It's along the order of like a BFS pencil, a BFS walking bait. That's really what it is. And when it first came out, I think I got it in a bone color. I got it in silver black. I forget what they call silver black. Prism silver black. So to me, this is almost like a chrome. So sunny days, and then bone, cloudy days. And I'm covered. That covers pretty much everything. And all the other colors, you know, they're kind of similar. Like Prism Ghost Shad, to me it's really almost the same as Prism Black Back. Prism Blue is same idea. This is a little different, but my bait fish on gold, you know, it's all that silver chartreuse. Now some of these other colors, they're a little bit different. You got a hit of chartreuse on the tail. It's purple on top. Now, yes, it is that silver flash, but it's a little bit muted. There's like a pearlescence over the side here. So it's not just flash. It's not just chrome. Same here. It's not just flash. It's not just chrome. What I really like is some of these matte colors. They're more subdued. So It looks like there's still the silver foil inside. And I really like this color for smallmouth in particular. A little hit of orange on the gills, chartreuse on the back, kind of bleeds into this pearlescent, matte, ghost pearl. Not sure what it looks like exactly, but I can look at it and tell you that smallmouth are going to eat it. That's another good color. It looks a lot, to me, some of these matte colors, they look a lot more like the bait fish that I see in the water than, I don't know, than this. This doesn't look like any bait fish I've seen recently. Anyway, I'm not going to go through them all, but Yo-Zuri has a lot of new colors in a lot of their lineup. They have some new Pro Series that may be worth a look. But I was happy to see them try a little bit to get away from some of these, to me this is like 90s state-of-the-art coloration. And I know they can do better, and they did. And this is a great bait. They just needed some more colorways, and they came out with them. So I think that's awesome. I think it's very well done. By the way, this bait, it's $7.99, or if you get it on sale, it's a great BFS walking bait. You don't need to pay $22 for a BFS walking bait. Anytime the fish are on small bait, clear water, pressured fish, comes with decent hooks out of the box. You can fish it right away, loop knot on the front. And if you have to, you can upgrade those hooks later on. Anyway, 2 thumbs up for Yo-Zuri. Job well done there. And all around, their whole product line. All right, let's go to Pad Rambler. So, still we're talking about top waters, but we're transitioning into frogs. And I'm trying to find maybe a different angle for this. It looks like they only have one. Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. All right, we'll just talk about it like this. So instead of having a standard frog body, which is sort of like a mono body, they've gone to a different design. It has a single tail for a skirt. So instead of 2 legs coming out, it has a single tail. That should do 2 things. It should maybe walk a little better, and it should come through the pads and other junk a little bit better. There should be less resistance. They've molded the body with these channels that the hook is recessed. It's literally recessed into, and it's kind of hiding behind this ridge on the back there. So there's a channel that it comes up through that'll help hold it in place, and it's, can't really tell from this angle, but the hook is angled in towards the body. It's recessed below that ridge. All of this is going to make it a very snag resistant frog. Like all snag proof frogs, it's going to have like a brass belly weight down here. You want to super glue that into the bait before fishing it. You could even put a little super glue up on this line tie up here. Make sure that doesn't pull out right away. And I like the idea. Where I think they missed the mark is that it's a 1/2 ounce. Now normally for pad fishing, you want a heavy bait to make an impression on the pads. You want those fish to know that the bait is there. So I would say at least 5/8 of an ounce. You might be able to fix that by putting like a weight in the belly, or even a tube rattle up in the belly slot. I can't see how the bottom is manufactured, so I don't know how big the gap is there. But if there's a slot to get something in there, you could increase the weight. You shouldn't really have to do that for $14 out of the pack. But this was innovative. This is something new. Even this high ridge for the eyes, that'll help shield the hooks. So this frog should come through not just pads, but I mean even brush, even reeds, better than most frogs. I don't know how well it collapses, and you're going to want this bait to collapse because the hooks are recessed. They're literally recessed, and they're pitched inward toward the center of the bait. So ideally you're going to want to fish this. You know, I fish a lot from a kayak. I'm low to the water. I don't have a great angle for hook sets. So to me, this is going to be more of a boat frog, a bass boat, but it doesn't have to be a bass boat, a crawdad, anything where you're at a higher hook setting angle to compensate for some of these recessed hooks and the ridges and the channels. It doesn't have a super wide gap, but it should come through cover better than most frogs, and so it's worth talking about, I thought anyway. All right, what's next? I think it was the Zoo Kick. Zoo Kick. There's been other baits like this, and it has, well, I'll just say it has pretty awful reviews. And one of the problems is that these legs can rip out, and the belly weight can fall out. So again, like all snag-proof frogs and most frogs in general, you run a bead of super glue around that brass weight on the belly, it doesn't come out. All right, that's one problem solved. Super glue around this junction for the legs, both sides, before you even fish it. Super glue around this line tie. Now, should you have to do that for an $11 bait? I would say no. But you also don't want to have a bait that's unfishable after your first couple casts, especially if you get a blow up, it rips the legs out, the belly weight falls out, and it rips away from the line tie. At $11, should you have to do these things? No, you really shouldn't. But this is what you have to deal with as fishermen. Now these hooks, these look like owner hooks. I would guess they are. I didn't see it listed, but they sure look like owner hooks with the cutting point there. They're tipped up, and there's a little tiny gap there between the body of the frog. So, you know, we're not recessed in channels. This should have a better, and they're tipped up. They're not tipped so much down and into the body, they're tipped up. So this should have a better hookup percentage than the pad, what's it called? The landing pad? Something like that. It should have the pad rambler. It should have a better hookup ratio than the landing pad, but it's going to be a little bit more snaggy. And it's designed for fishing more open water situations because it has these kicker feet. And kicker feet don't work well over lily pads. They would work fine in gaps in lily pads. So there's mixed reviews here, but I think it can be fixed, at least to made fishable. And so to me, it's still worth considering. All right, let's keep going. Strike King Hogfather. Now this is a collaboration with the gentleman that made the Tater Hog. Yeah, Tater Hog Custom Lures. And now they have an injection molded bait from Strike King. Now, I haven't fished it. It's a brand new bait. It's not in stock. But if they got this right, for $45, I know for some people that's a lot of money to spend, but for $45 for a glide bait, if it works as well as the Hogfather, it's 2.5 ounces, it's 7 inches. It's not a giant bait for swim baits, but it's big enough. It's big enough to attract attention. It's a glide bait like the Spro KGB, like the Chimera. And it comes in some nice, I like that chrome herring. And to me, this is a herring profile. It looks a lot like a herring. Tail section looks a lot like a herring. The bone color looks pretty good. Ghost herring looks a lot like a herring. This, you know, these ghost colors, to me, that's not the point of glide baits. I feel like I'm trying to attract fish from a distance. I'm trying to attract bigger fish. but maybe there's a place for it in ultra clear water situations, super clear, gin clear reservoirs. Maybe, but for me, it doesn't. It doesn't really talk to me. You know, this is another like transparent color. The way transparent colors come into play for me most of the time, or translucent, whatever you want to call it, is if there's some manufacturing problem with the paint job. So if this paint, if people use this bait and the paint is just peeling off, not saying it does, I'm just saying if, big if there, then these clear plastic colors, they become more attractive to me just because I don't want to deal with the paint peeling off. But otherwise, I'd rather fish bolder colors. You know, so I think these two colors, especially that chrome herring, the bone color best. That bluegill's not terrible. It is kind of transparent. I could see the balls in there, but it's got a little bit more presence than, you know, something that's just completely clear with a little bit of color on top. So to me, that's really nice. That so I mentioned the KGB. That's another collaboration with a different company, Spro. And it's nice that these custom builders that had limited availability, very high prices, that they're making these baits available towards more of a mass market production audience, and that's where I fall too. You know, I'm not paying $300 for a bait. And let's see if we can find. Let's see if we can find. They had a new bait. It was kind of crazy looking. It was 3 baits in one, and to me it doesn't really have much appeal. Spro frog, Spro spin it buzz baits. I'm not going to be able to find it right now, but it was 3 baits in one, basically like a KGB shad that 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 was fused to 2 other baits, and then they also had a small KGB shad. And you know, for me, I would rather just stick with this. This is the one I have, the ghost perch. It just, to me, it just makes a lot more sense in that size. It looks like a perch. There's not 3 of them together, and I don't want a tiny glide. So to me, this is the one that makes the most sense. All right, let's see. Is there anything else here that I want to really talk about? I think you know what? I think I'll wrap it up here. I think we covered all the highlights that I saw, at least the top line stuff. Now, of course, there's going to be new colors listed for other baits. There's going to be a few other baits that I probably skipped over or missed. There's the high-end reels we could spend a long time talking about, but I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. And I can't list all the baits in the video description because a lot of them just aren't out yet or not available. But I hope this was helpful, and we'll do it again when there's a new release of new baits, maybe next year at ICAST or anytime there's a bunch of new baits hitting the market. All right, thanks again. Catch you on the next one. See ya.